Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Financial Issues. Great to be here with you this morning. Seth Sam Case, the Studio A team with you today. Happy to be here, folks. 610-363-1110 is the number to call in if you'd like to join us for the conversation. We'd be happy to have you today. 610-363-1110. Great to have you all this morning. Hey, folks, I want you to make sure to check out, we sent out a sell alert yesterday for partners. Okay, if you're not a partner, this doesn't apply to you. If your interest is piqued, you can become a partner today. But for partners, a sell alert, one hard sell, a couple soft sells. So please check that out. You should have gotten an email alert, and that's also up on the alerts page. Also, if you are a partner, you should have received a text message to your phone within the last probably 20 minutes or so. So that's a nice new feature that we have here for alerts.
The future is now,
That's right.
Seth.
The future's now, baby. So if you are a partner with us, you should have received that. If you didn't receive that, and guys in the control room, you guys can correct me on this if I'm saying something wrong, but reach out to us. We might be able to help you out with that. But otherwise, that should be something that you got now as a text message, probably in the last, I'm going to say 20 minutes or so. So make sure that you check those out. That'll be a way that we try to communicate with you, partners, as best we can on things like this for the future. So just another great partner benefit, and all the more reason to become one. Today, folks, financialissues.org. You can do that right now. We appreciate our partners so very much, but all of our listeners as well. No matter how you're listening today, welcome to the show. Great to have you with us on today's show. So let me just say this right off the bat. You know, we're all about biblically responsible investing here, folks, as you know that if you've listened to the show for any length of time. Part of biblically responsible investing, part of it, is wanting to see companies move away from godless agendas and then commit to simply running a good business. Now, that's not all of what biblically responsible investing is. We'll actually flesh that out a little bit later on in the show. But we do this in part through petitions, through sell alerts. Again, we just got a sell alert yesterday. Sometimes we'll issue sell alerts for biblically responsible reasons. That means a company might be doing great financially, but they've started to use investor dollars to fund things like abortion or gambling or pornography or human rights abuses or different things like that. We want no part of this, and so we'll part ways from those companies. So we do this in these ways. But, you know, we're not the only ones out there who are doing this, trying to seek change in these companies at the grassroots level for good. So coming up in the next segment, I'm going to sit down with a man named Stefan Padfield. He's the executive director of the Free Enterprise Project at the National Center for Public Policy Research. Stefan and his team do a great job of trying to use their investor dollars to change things in several big market-moving companies on Wall Street. You're not going to want to miss that interview. It's going to be a great time. So that's going to be in the next segment there. I'll have Stefan on with me. Also, we get the latest news from the ongoing trade talks between the U.S. and China. Looks like we have a deal, folks. So we'll see that in just a moment here. Meanwhile, Donald Trump and Elon Musk might be beginning to mend fences. Some good stuff there. We'll see that as well. Also, your calls and questions today, 610-363-1110. It's wonderful to be here with you, folks. Before all that, though, we did get the latest inflation numbers out this morning. We'll do that first. Let's take a look at those inflation numbers, and then we'll talk about that U.S.-China deal. So CPI came out this morning. It is the broad-based measure of goods and services across the U.S. economy. It increased only 0.1% for the month. That puts the annual inflation rate at 2.4%. That was a slighter increase than many economists expected. So that seems to be some pretty good news there. A lot of news outlets we're seeing, including CNBC, are saying, oh, you know, Trump's tariffs are really going to, you know, cause some real bad stuff for the economy, but we're not seeing it yet. It's not reflected yet. Yeah, well, maybe it's just because we're actually moving in a good direction here, folks. That
it seems like every month these outlets release these projections of doom and woe, and then the release when the data comes out is shockingly, it's not that bad. So how long is it going to take till it's not that shocking anymore?
That's exactly right. That's well said, Sam. So if you go on to CNBC, you'll see something like that. But we did get CPI out this morning, so that's what that's looking like there. All right, Sam, let's talk about that U.S.-China deal. So that's really the big geopolitical news this morning. It looks like we do have a deal, but what can you tell us about this, Sam? What are we looking at here?
Well, the big news came from Donald Trump actually about a half an hour ago. Yep. He says our deal with China is done. This is coming off of Truth Social. He says it's subject to final approval with President Xi Jinping and myself. Full magnets and any necessary rare earths will be supplied upfront by China. If you remember, the big issue with the ongoing trade negotiations with China is the rare earths issue. Trump goes on to say, likewise, we will provide to China what was agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and universities, which has always been good with me. We are getting a total of 55% tariffs. China is getting 10%. Relationship is excellent. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And you're welcome, President Trump. We did give you the attention.
Great stuff. Yeah, he says our deal with China is done, subject to final approval. Anyway, so that's what that sounded like there.
No,
good
go
stuff.
On. Do the whole thing.
No. I'm going to spare our audience from that. No, that's good. But so we'll be kind of seeing how this plays out here, folks. Again, Sam, the big question is going to be, is China going to uphold their end of the bargain? They did not last time. This is really, we were talking about this before the show, this is basically the old deal just reinstituted, right? And so we'll have to see how that goes.
And it's not even really approved. Trump says it's done, but goes on to say, but it's still subject to final approval between myself and President Xi. So we'll have to see where that goes.
Exactly right. So we'll be keeping an eye on that, folks. If we see anything in regard to that during the live show today, we'll be sure to bring that to your attention here. Sam, let's do this. Let's get to what's going on with Trump and Elon as well, because I think that's really important for us to kind of see here. Looks like they are mending fences, Sam.
It's a Republican Hallmark movie, Seth.
It really is.
It's amazing.
It really is. They're coming together. Yeah.
So it does. Yes, it looks like Elon and Trump are playing nice after their major meltdown last week over the big, beautiful bill. Yesterday, Trump told reporters he has no plans to get rid of Starlink at the White House, and also said some very nice things about Elon as well. Here's President Trump.
Are you going to get rid of the Tesla and the Starlink service that you have here at the White House?
No, I haven't heard that. I mean, I may move the Tesla around a little bit, but I don't think we'll be doing that with Starlink. It's a good service. Look, I wish him well. You understand. We had a good relationship, and I just wish him well. Very well, actually.
During that conversation with reporters, Trump also defended Elon from some rumors going around the White House right now. Elon responded to that video on social media with a heart emoji. He also said he apologizes for some of the more, let's say, inflammatory comments he said about Trump last week. In fact, Elon has been deleting some of his explosive posts, especially the one concerning Trump and the Epstein files, where he basically accused Trump of being in cahoots with Epstein.
Yeah, that's good stuff. You know, Sam, yesterday we actually saw that apparently there were some serious tiffs going on in the White House. You told me yesterday kind of a comical story. It is unfortunate, but it's rather comical that there was it actually came to fisticuffs between Elon Musk and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, which that news just broke in the last couple days. Pretty nuts to think about. They had to be physically separated. Sam, if I'm correct, were they arguing over the big, beautiful bill?
No, it was actually, according to the reports, it was about who was going to lead the IRS. Bessent wanted someone and Elon wanted someone else. And according to that report, it got a little physical between the two of them. But actually, that's what Trump was defending Elon from yesterday. Someone asked about that, and he said, well, listen, I didn't see anything physical between the two of them. That's kind of a plausible deniability type thing. He's saying, well, I didn't see anything. He didn't say it didn't happen. He just said he didn't see it. But still, that's him defending Elon's honor in at least some way.
Yeah, that's a gesture of goodwill, and I think we could definitely see some really good value in that, folks. I think that's good. I think the president means it when he says that, too. He genuinely wishes Elon very well. And like it or not, Elon Musk was vital for Trump's reelection. I mean, he just was. And I think friendship with Trump has proven to do some good things for Elon Musk as well. So it's been a mutually beneficial relationship for those two. Some things can't be undone. I wonder how deep that wound is. I mean, Elon did accuse Trump of being on the Epstein client list, which, by the way, if we're reading the writing on the wall and using common sense there, don't you think the Biden administration would have said something if Trump was actually on the client list? I mean,
you'd think, right?
You would think so. You would think so. I'm not. I've never seen the list. I don't know if he's on it or not. He could be, but just using common sense there, you just got to wonder.
It's also not exactly the best look for Elon. Let's say in this world that Trump actually is on the list. What that means is Elon knew.
Right. He knew
that Trump's on the list, but he kept it quiet because it's politically expedient to him. Yeah. That's not really the best look for Elon. So I doubt it's true.
You're exactly right, Sam. Something's not adding up there. So anyway, fences are being being mended there. It's good stuff. All right, let's move now to the markets, folks. Yesterday, Tuesday, the indices, again, they were forced to just kind of sit tight as they awaited the trade discussion between China and the U.S. So by Tuesday's closing bell, the Dow finished 0.25% in the positive, the S&P 0.5% positive, the NASDAQ 0.6% positive. So pretty good day. Now, the pre-markets this morning, they were dipping as they were kind of digesting what was going on with this announcement of the U.S.-China deal. But then once we got CPI, they started to rise. So as we're sitting right now, let's take a look. The pre-markets priced into open relatively positive. So it's really not all that high, but they seem to be digesting everything, and we'll see how they open in about 15 minutes or so. All right, folks, coming up next here, we've got Stefan Padfield joining me. Again, you're not going to want to miss this interview with Stefan, talking about what he and his team are doing to try to make some serious changes and steer the boat in the right direction on the inside of some of these companies. We'll talk about that. Then afterwards, we'll talk a little more about kind of these different approaches, biblically responsible investing versus some of this more impact investing stuff. All that on Financial Issues when we come back right after this break. Stick with us.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Through Crossroads Kids Club, lives like Dali's are being changed all over the world.
When I was 8 years old, my parents separated temporarily. It made me feel lost, empty, and without direction. Until one day, I went with my cousins to the Crossroads Club. This led me to know Lord Jesus and accept Him in my heart. He changed my life, and I don't feel lonely anymore.
Reaching kids with the hope of the gospel in schools and across the world. You can change a young life today at reachourschools.com.
Hi, this is Shana Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, folks. It's good to be here with you this morning. As you all know, if you're followers of our program, you probably know this. And for those of you who maybe are joining us for the first time, you'll find out really quickly. Here at Financial Issues, we're all about holding companies' feet to the fire when it comes to biblically responsible investing, of course. We want companies to stay neutral. We want them to treat their shareholders well. We don't want them involved in any kind of nonsense, political agendas that is going to be harmful to the shareholders as well as the customers also. We just want businesses to be in the business of being a good business. To use the word business probably too frequently there. Now, thankfully, we're not the only ones out there who are trying to do this. We also have organizations like the National Center for Public Policy and specifically the Free Enterprise Project. I've got a very special guest on the program with me today. I've got Stefan Padfield. Stefan is the executive director of the Free Enterprise Project at the National Center for Public Policy. He and his team work tirelessly to keep American corporate life free from woke nonsense. And we say yes and amen to that. Stefan, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. That's a beautiful introduction. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely, sir. You know, we've had you on once before. It was back several months ago, but please remind our listeners just once again about the work that you do with the Free Enterprise Project. What's your organization engaged in specifically on a daily basis, and why do you do what you do?
Sure. So the Free Enterprise Project is one of the projects under the umbrella of the National Center for Public Policy Research. So I certainly encourage your listeners to go to our website, nationalcenter.org, and see all the different types of things that we're doing there. But at the Free Enterprise Project specifically, we basically work as a shareholder activist. So we own shares in a number of companies, name brand companies that your listeners would recognize, and we engage with them in a variety of ways, probably most prominently with our shareholder proposals. So we file these proposals. There's an entire rules-based system for who gets to file and when and how you get on the proxy. But ultimately, when we are able to get on the proxy and make it through the SEC review process, we then show up at the meetings, we make our pitch, and it's our way of essentially, as you say, trying to get corporations back to neutral. You know, I heard somebody recently say something that I really like, which is for those of us on the right, we just want corporations to get back to neutral. We win if they get back to neutral. Whereas the left has to have these corporations embrace or be forced to embrace their totalitarian views. So we actually have an advantage there because all we're asking for is neutrality. And so we do our work with these shareholder proposals. We're also engaged in litigation. Some of your listeners may have seen that recently we filed a lawsuit against United, questioning whether or not there are some problems there related to anti-Israel bias. And as soon as we filed that suit, they walked back some of their flight restrictions. So we do some work in that space. And then certainly just generally think tank sort of things like writing op-eds, writing papers. But engagement is the overarching theme. So when we file a proposal, we talk to the corporation, we try to get them to move the needle back to neutral, and then we'll withdraw our proposal if they do that. We've had some good success with that this season. But that's essentially the kind of work that we're doing.
Well, you know, I'll tell you what, brother, it's really an honor to be able to come alongside you guys. And what you guys do specifically, we here at Financial Issues really focus more on, finding companies that are not engaged in all the nonsense and investing in those companies. You guys are doing that impact where you're going in there and trying to change those companies. And that's amazing. And we want to be able to lift you guys up and celebrate that work. That is awesome. Once again, folks, nationalcenter.org is the place to go. So, Stefan, last week you issued a press release on the National Center's website titled Walmart, Netflix, PayPal, and Alphabet Held Accountable. I like what I'm hearing there right away. This concerns an annual shareholder meeting with each of these four companies. Would you share with our listeners what transpired in the last few days? Bring us up to speed on what's been going on with this.
Sure. So this is definitely the busy part of our season. We had 4 meetings last week. We've got 5 this week. So if we start with Walmart, they deserve a lot of credit, because they have walked back a lot of their divisive and what I think is fairly described as neo-racist and neo-Marxist DEI agenda. But we still had some questions, right? We certainly want to commend them. We want to encourage them to continue to go back to neutral. But 2 of our questions were, first and foremost, why did it take so long, right? Why did it take basically the DEI agenda being exposed to the public before you were willing to walk it back? And I think of particular concern there is, I'm sure you even, I think, mentioned Robbie Starbuck. Robbie Starbuck, I'm sure is, a lot of your listeners are fans of his work. I am Absolutely. A fan of his work.
We certainly
easy to say, God bless Robbie Starbuck.
That's right. That's right.
So, when he engages with companies, one of the things that he's reported back, and I believe him about this, is that he'll bring the receipts, right? I mean, he is actually simply exposing what is actually going on in the name of DEI. Nobody that I know has accused him of lying, right? Which I think is something really critical to keep pointing out. That is, it is actually the substance of these programs themselves that gets people to back away, right? Once you show them, because the words, I mean, the left deserves so much credit. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Who could be against that, right? But it's when you lift up the hood and you look up what's going on that you see the problems. So basically, he reported back that a lot of times he would show this to the executives and they would be shocked as to what's going on in the name of DEI. Now, there's a number of responses we could have to that. I think it's problematic from fiduciary duty standpoint, but certainly it's a place where shareholders should be asking questions, right? Do you have the appropriate information flow? Is there a problem of activists, in the bowels of your institutional bureaucracy that are pushing through this stuff behind the back of the upper level executives? So that was one of the questions. And then the other thing is, as excited as we are, and I think everyone, and I'm sure all your listeners are, about the vibe shift that we've seen and the actual tangible walking back from DEI and ESG by a lot of these companies, we do have to be very cautious about this being cosmetic, right? So they changed the language, they removed some pages from the web page. I mean, one of the things that I've seen that's been incredibly frustrating is literally within the same day, you'll hear a pronouncement from a corporation saying, we're essentially backing away from DEI. And then they'll turn to their leftist stakeholders and say, we're definitely not changing anything about DEI, right? I mean, it's completely unsustainable to use the sustainability lingo. So we went back and we looked at their reports and their pages, and there's still a lot of things to be concerned about. One of the things we pointed out at the meeting was, they have their, I think they call it belonging now, right? So they changed the rhetoric, belonging page, and it basically references people of color 14 times and never references merit once. Okay. And then it's got these huge graphs about, demographic proportionality, sex, race. And so you can walk away from that and think to yourself, what exactly has changed? Because this looks exactly like the problematic focus on divisive DEI that we're concerned about. So that's a couple of things that were going on there at Walmart. And just, I know I spent a lot of time on that. I can get a little bit, fired up with these issues. But let me just real quick walk through the other ones. So then we went to PayPal. There we had a question about charitable contributions, right? And two issues predominantly. One is the extent to which they rely on the Southern Poverty Law Center to determine whether or not something constitutes hate or intolerance. If your listeners aren't familiar with the Southern Poverty Law Center, they brand themselves as this sort of nonpartisan fact checker, if you will, but they are completely biased and essentially try to weaponize those terms, those very vague terms, hate, intolerance, solely against right-leaning and conservative groups, right? So one of our concerns was, yes, PayPal, you don't have a policy that says we discriminate against conservative religious groups, but you have this hate speech policy, and you rely on the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, and we want to know and raise some issues there, raise some concerns, and know whether or not you are using that as cover to engage in anti-conservative bias, right? And then the other was the Human Rights Campaign. I'm sure your listeners are familiar with that organization. They have a corporate equality index. They essentially push radical transgenderism. And so we asked PayPal about that. Why are you involved in this with this organization? And so I think one thing I want to point out when it comes to corporate involvement with HRC, we've engaged with a number of companies. You mentioned Alphabet. We specifically are asking them to stop participating in the HRC's equality index. And here's the point that I keep making is, so this organization is very clearly pushing a radical transgender agenda. And so when these corporations support the corporate equality index by responding to the survey, or they even become partners, platinum partners, and so forth, have they actually come out in their board meeting and said, yes, we believe that a child can be born in the wrong body. We believe that a minor, should have, sex mutilation surgery behind the back of their parents. We believe boys and men should participate in women's sports. Are you actually answering those questions? Because that's what that organization is pushing. And if you're supporting that organization, then you should at least have decided that as part of your fiduciary duty. And then lastly, in terms of neutrality, one of the things that we'll do is we'll say, look, we don't want you doing anything politicized at all. But if you're going to lean into the left-leaning agenda, then you got to have some balance, right? That's the other way to get to neutrality. So why are you falling over backwards to support the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index and more broadly their agenda? And you're basically stiff-arming Alliance Defending Freedom, which has its own bias viewpoint diversity survey, right? So at the very least, how about doing both? right? And then lastly, at Netflix, we have an affirmative action proposal, right? Basically pointing out in our proposal places where Netflix is essentially practicing affirmative action, right? And the sorts of things we see in this space is, a company will say, oh, we're donating, $100 million and we're only going to use that money to support, Black female businesses, which is essentially putting up a sign that says, no white males apply kind of thing.
That's right.
It's just straight up racial discrimination. And the fact that companies are still doing that is shocking, right? But that's the sort of thing that we fight against. And that's what we're out there every day and every week doing at these meetings.
Stefan, that is awesome. And tell our listeners really quickly here, because we want to be able to keep up to date with what's going on with these proposals. How can we follow? Is it all just at thenationalcenter.org?
Yeah, easiest thing to do is to go to the nationalcenter.org, and we've got a portal there, very obvious, that you can sign up for weekly email alerts.
Okay.
And you can limit it to only one of our projects, but I would say get all of them, because we have Project 21 is a Black Ambassador Conservative Voices Network. We've got Able Americans dealing with disability issues. And so just sign up for the newsletter. It's not very intrusive. Once a week, you get updated.
Awesome. Stefan Padfield, Executive Director of the Free Enterprise Project. We appreciate you so much, brother. Thank you for joining us today on the show and for the work that you guys do in the corporate space. We'll be right back, folks, after this break. Stick with us.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
So I'm trying to plan ahead, and I thought investing would be a good idea. I was going to buy some stock from Back4 Tech, Inc.
Yeah, they're actually under investigation for supplying technology that helps human traffickers.
Oh, what about microdrafts?
They support the gambling industry.
U.S. cardboard company, people always need cardboard.
Abortion lobbyists.
How do you know all this?
I just go by the stock list from Financial Issues.
Feel confident and rest assured that your money is not supporting the things that grieve the heart of God. For more information, go to financialissues.org to find out how you can be biblically responsible with your investments. Go to financialissues.org today. Grow your money God's way.
My baby was like this big. He's like this tiny little spectrum of hope and this unnamed beauty, in a sense. It was poetic. And I saw his heart beating on the screen. And I mean, I went from, I don't want this baby, it's just a fetus, it's just cells put together, to talking to my child on the screen and feeling really protective and knowing that there's life growing inside. I mean, that sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to mom. I'm a mom.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Folks, great to be here with you all today. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Stefan. We'll talk a little more about that in just a moment. First, we got a question from Daniel in the chat from Tennessee. Daniel, good morning to you, brother, saying, I got the email alert. How do you sign up for text alerts? And Daniel, I'm told the answer is our friend Grant, who has just entered the chat. Grant Ace is one of our beloved members here at the team. He's one of our broadcast experts. Send Grant an email. Okay, it's Grant, Grant, at financialissues.org.
It's such a creative email.
Yeah, it really is. It's quite creative. Grant, first name, Grant at financialissues.org. You send him an email, just say, hey, I need help. I want to sign up for the text alert, and he'll be able to help you out for sure. I see many of you did get the text, which is awesome. If you didn't, though, Grant's your guy. Reach out to him.
In case you're one of those unlucky souls cast out into the darkness and you long for the holy light of FISM, email Grant.
Grant's your guy. So good stuff. Daniel, thanks for that question. Appreciate that. Folks, today's show brought to you in part by our friends at Crossroads Kids Club. Crossroads is doing some amazing things, not only in our country, reaching children for the gospel in public schools, but across the world as well. They're in a bit of a worldwide initiative right now, reaching people in various countries, in Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, many other places throughout the world. So if you want to be a part of that, check them out at reachOurSchools.com. We appreciate our friends at Crossroads so very much. And we appreciate all of you also. Sam, let's follow up here from that Stefan interview. I know right now, actually, perhaps as we speak, but at least today, he'll be working at the shareholder meeting for Dick's Sporting Goods.
Yes,
trying to do some stuff there. What can you tell us about that?
Well, he's really going to let him have it, too, because, yes, today he's presenting an anti-DEI proposal at their annual shareholder meeting, as you said, for Dick's Sporting Goods. That proposal is requesting that the board compile a report on the potential risks involved with maintaining the company's affirmative action goals. Now, what's interesting about this is it appears ahead of this vote, Dick's Sporting Goods has been slowly revoking some of their DEI policies, basically scrubbing their website of the most offensive things related to DEI, and Stefan plans on calling them out. He plans to say today, quote, to the best of our knowledge, at least some of the brazen examples of discrimination set forth in our proposal are no longer viewable. And he goes on to say, to the extent that is correct, one would be forgiven for concluding that our proposal has already had the intended impact, at least to some extent. But then why doesn't Dick's acknowledge this in its opposition statement? One concern is that these changes are merely cosmetic, making the report we request even more critical for shareholders. So what he's saying is, we don't know if they're actually doing this out of their heart, if they want real change, or is this just to avoid the consequences of this vote, so we better pass this anyway.
Yeah, good stuff there, Sam. I appreciate you bringing that up to us. By the way, folks, Dick's, of course, is not biblically responsible. Their involvement in abortion activism and LGBTQ activism. This DEI stuff, I believe, as Sam, as you've said many times on the show before, is kind of an issue of where there's smoke, there's fire. And so you're seeing the smoke of the DEI stuff, I think, as a result of the fire, the fact that they're not biblically responsible. So it's be good to pray for success for Stefan and his team today. But, you know, Sam, that leads to an interesting conversation. And I want to get our chat family involved in this as well. If you're watching on the website or you're watching on X or you're watching on any of the other places, we'd love to hear from you with this. But I'd love to hear your thoughts too, Sam. Is it enough to do what we do? Now, that sounds like a silly question. I think you probably know what my answer is because I do this every day. Of course, I'm probably going to say it is, but just hear me out for a second. Is it enough to just do biblically responsible investing, or should we, as Stefan and his team are doing, should we seek to get our hands dirty, as it were, and purposefully get involved and invest in non-BRI companies to steer the ship in the right direction? I would love to hear your thoughts on the chat there, folks. Is it enough to just do biblically responsible investing? It's an interesting question. Sam, what are your thoughts?
Personally, I think it takes both, but it takes absolute commitment to both. So if you're going to pick one, we do BRI. So we're saying if you're going to be doing BRI, you have to absolutely be committed to that, or else it doesn't have the intended effect. It's not being biblically responsible if you're being a little loose with that. You're not honoring God in that way. On the flip side, if you're going to do the impact investing route, you have to be fully committed to that and choose your targets very carefully as Stefan does, or else what you're really doing is just saying, whatever, I'm just investing in the best companies I want to invest in, and I don't really care. It's kind of a way out to do non-BRI, to say I'm doing impact investing, but I'm not really doing anything with it. Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely does. I think you're spot on with that, Sam, definitely. And here's kind of how I see it. And again, I'll try to get some of our chat comments if you guys can put those in if you've got an answer to that question. Is it enough what we do, or should we be doing more? Here's the difference. I think both groups, us and Stefan's team, doing great work and trying to get to a good end result of changing companies for the better. And so we should stand shoulder to shoulder. That said, we at FISM see the most important issue as, I think, different than what they may see as the most important issue. Here it is. Our most important issue, the crux of what we do, is that BRI is a personal conviction. So what is more important than making an impact in companies is that you stand before God with a clean conscience. That is more important. I absolutely believe that. That is more important. That's what we believe here at the ministry. That is our most important issue. Biblically responsible investing is a conviction of the heart where you basically promise, you're saying, I will not allow my money to be used for evil purposes at all. At all, solely for the glory of God. We believe what's more important than making an impact with our investments, as good as that can be, impact investing, is honoring God with your money. It's a heart issue. It starts in the heart. That's what's most important. And that's what we believe, folks. And, we've received some pushback from that in the past, but we're going to continue doing that, even if it means, not investing in certain things that might generate a return. What's more important than good returns is being holy. That's more important. Their most important issue, and I'm not saying this is a criticism of them at all, they have chosen, Sam, as you said, they've chosen to do something that is also really good and made that their most important issue, is hitting companies in the bottom line, which means they are purposefully investing in companies like that to try to change the culture. We want to support that. We want to say, yes, go forward and do that, and we'll come alongside to provide the biblically responsible investing as well, and we can fight this battle together. Their issue that is primary for them is secondary for us. We also want to hit companies in the bottom line, but first and foremost, we want to be pure of heart. We want to be clean in our hearts. Does that make sense, Sam? Am I saying that in the right way? Don't want to sound legalistic. I'm not trying to sound legalistic.
No, certainly. I mean, I would argue that you probably could do what Stefan's doing with a clean conscience. Sure. That's just not what we do, because if your sole intention is changing these companies, right, so they're not doing these things, really what he's doing isn't about investing. Yeah. It's about making an impact in the culture. What we're doing is about investing. It's about growing your money. Right. That's really not what he's concerned with.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, folks, I bring this up because I believe we need groups like the National Center. We need people like that. We need Stefan's team to do that good work, and we need people like us who do biblically responsible investing. You need them. It really becomes two different methods to achieve the same goal. And I believe that same goal is honoring God with what he's given us, changing the culture for good, for the glory of God. We've been given a country, we've been given a culture to steward well. We're not just supposed to sit aside and just wait for the end times to come, wait for the end to end times to come. I actually believe that, God has given us the opportunity to do some really good things while we're here, and we'd be wasting our energy, we'd be wasting our talents, we'd be wasting everything that he's given us if we just sat aside in a corner in fetal position and prayed and waited until he came back. I don't think that's what we're supposed to do. I think we're supposed to get in the fight. And so it's an honor to be a part of it with groups like Stefan's team, for sure. It's good stuff. Hope that made sense, folks. Coming on the other side of the break, we'll read a couple of your comments in the chat there. But let's take a look real quick here now at the markets. They've all opened mixed. So let's see here. Let me refresh here before the ag, if I can get to this quickly. Dow Jones is at the flat line. S&P is just above the flat line. NASDAQ creeping up towards 1/5 of a percentage point. So that's what the markets are looking like today. Still pretty tame as we're seeing. All right, we've got Craig Haugaard coming up with the ag report right here, and then we'll be back with more financial issues right on the other side of this break. Again, we'll get to some of those chat comments coming on the other side. Here comes Craig Haugaard, and then we'll be right back after this.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for June 11th. Well, corn traders responded to planting delays and lags in the eastern Corn Belt yesterday. Ohio was 89% planted versus a 94% 5-year average. Pennsylvania has 82% of the crop in the ground versus the average rate of 88%. We've got Kentucky checking in at 88% planted versus their normal rate of 95%. Now, with these states beyond their final planting date, the question is whether there's going to be a good faith attempt to plant their original corn acres or switch to soybeans instead. Probably of greatest interest to traders is Ohio, where as much as 300,000 acres could get switched away from corn over to soybeans or just left into prevented plant. As a result, July corn was 5 1/4 cents higher yesterday at 4.38 3/4. The soybean market ignored the good crop ratings and planting progress and moved higher as they're buoyed by the ongoing Chinese trade talks. We had July beans finish the day a penny and 3/4 higher at 10.57 3/4. As we noted in yesterday's update, U.S. winter wheat conditions came in better than expected, and as a result, futures prices were pressed lower during yesterday's session. Funds were adding to their short position. In a wonderful world of exports, U.S. export values remain at a premium to Russian FOB values, and both the U.S. and Russian crop look pretty large. Minneapolis July wheat was 9 1/4 lower from the session at 6.13 1/4. Kansas City dropped by 10 1/4 cents, closing at 5.27 1/4. In which Chicago 7.5 cents lower at 5.34 1/2. Cotton futures just remain range bound. December ended the day yesterday 64 points lower at 67.71. Livestock futures were mixed. August live cattle were $1.05 lower at $218.20 per hundred. August feeder cattle were $1.50 higher at $313.15 per hundred. And we had July lean hog futures $1 better at $108.20 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures seem to have resumed their downtrend. When yesterday's closing bell sounded, July futures were 30 points lower at 18.52. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Egg Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
Through Crossroads Kids Club, lives like Sarah E's are being changed all over the world.
When I was 8 or 9 years old, I became aware of the kind of family environment that I was living in. My father, thanks to his alcoholism and drug use, ran the home with insults, physical and psychological abuse. And that led me to start harming myself. But when the church started the Crossroads Club, it helped me to draw closer to feeling Christ in my heart again, and to heal. When I was at the Crossroads Club, seeing the volunteers serving God, this truly filled my heart with a lot of joy. I wanted to be like them.
Reaching kids with the hope of the gospel in schools and across the world. You can change a young life today at reachOurSchools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Hey, welcome back to Financial Issues, folks. Good to be here with you today. It's been a busy show. The chat is lively. So we'll get to some of these comments here. I asked the question, is it enough to do BRI or do we need to be doing more? And so many of you gave some great answers here. Stephen from Oklahoma saying, Seth, thank you for sharing your heart on BRI. It's so tempting to stray and want to dabble in non-BRI while searching for income stocks. Stephen, you're very welcome. And I really do appreciate that. It really is a conviction of the heart. Sam and I were talking during that break. It really is. We are we genuinely want to be able to provide an investment strategy for you. And as we were talking in that break, with the work that Stefan and his team do, there's a certain level of it where you kind of do have to give up your goal of investing to make a profit.
It's not really an investing strategy. It's an activist
It's actually
strategy.
an activist strategy. It's more you're investing to try to change something. And so maybe if you're considering doing that, it might be a better idea for those of us who have a little bit more when it comes to net worth, a little bit more ability to invest, a little bit more to be able to make an impact.
I kind of view it as, maybe Stefan would disagree with me, but I kind of view it as more of a wealthy man's game, so that you have more to leverage in these companies as opposed to your average investor who you're just trying to grow your wealth. So, and you also have to know yourself. Are you someone, and I have a feeling most people aren't like this, are you someone who wants to read all of the reports coming out for the shareholder meetings and actively be involved in those conversations? I have a feeling most people aren't like that. They just want to dump their money, see if it's doing well, buy, sell, hold, all that stuff. They don't want to be involved in the intricacies of the individual companies. If that is you, though, if you are some sort of policy wonk who cares about that, you have money to leverage, I don't know, maybe that would be something that you'd want to look at what Stefan's doing. That's just not most people.
Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely. Let's see, Dave and Darlene, good to see you guys. Lisa here as well. Brian from Missouri, good to see you there, brother. Claude, good to see you, my man. Hope the move is going well. I know Claude has been in the middle of a move, so we've been praying for you, brother. Daniel from Tennessee, great to see you, brother. I know we answered your question earlier. Robert from Texas, talking about our founder, Dan Celia, saying he tried to do both, but remember, Dan never slept. And Robert, you're right about that. He certainly, he would wake up very early in the morning to prep for the show and did a lot of that stuff. Nelson from Louisiana saying it takes both approaches, all on your own conscience. Love that. Robert from Texas saying y'all have enough on your plate. Stick with BRI. Robert, you got it, man. That's actually part of why we want to uplift groups like Stefan's group, because we know they can do that stuff. We're focusing on what we do well. Let them focus on what they do well. So I think that's excellent. Let's see. We've got, who else do we have here in the chat? I think I mentioned most of you. Brian from Virginia. I see you, brother. Good to see you there. George from North Carolina. Hello to you, George. I think I mentioned Robert from Texas, but if I didn't, good to see you, brother. And of course, Uncle John from Indianapolis, Indiana. Great to see you, my friend, as always. Welcome to all of you. Andy, I see you there as well from Kansas. Great to see you. And Daniel from Tennessee. I think I already got Daniel, so I apologize for saying your name multiple times. James in South Carolina is here as well. Debbie from Kentucky, also good to see you as well, Debbie. The Financial Issues family is much appreciated here. Alrighty, folks, let's continue this conversation now, Sam, as we're talking about the DEI stuff. That's been a recurring theme on our show. Corporations are continuing to scrub DEI, but I wonder how serious they are at this.
Big question, right?
Yeah,
that's the whole thing we've been talking about. That's what Stefan said in your interview. He said, "Are these guys actually serious?" By the way, I also love that he out and out called DEI what it is. He just said it's racial discrimination.
That was great.
For the sake of this conversation today, I'm still going to be using the term DEI just so we know what we're talking about. But yes, according to recent analysis from Gravity Research, they were reviewing public documents from Fortune 100 companies showing that language connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion has dropped by over 70% this year, with the term DEI in particular dropping by 98%. So some sort of impact is happening right there. They're trying to cover themselves a little bit because the blowback is real. Some companies, they're trying to replace these terms with more neutral ones that are still kind of DEI light, things like belonging and, quote, diverse perspectives. But even many of these phrases are fading away. Of companies making changes to their policies, nearly half have outright revised or eliminated hiring diversity goals. So saying we're going to hire, 25% Latinos, 25% white, 25% black. They said we're just not going to do that. And others have also ended racial and gender considerations for executive compensation as well. Meanwhile, outside of the corporate sphere, however, CBS polling shows Americans are still kind of split about whether DEI should actually stay or go.
Fascinating that they're split. I mean, DEI is proven over and over again to just be absolute nonsense. And it is great to see so many of these, really, Sam, what I would call is discriminatory hiring practices go away. It's proven to be harmful for businesses. You need competition. Doesn't matter the skin color. Doesn't matter the gender. If the person is best for the job, they get hired for the job. That should be the thing. Shouldn't matter if you have darker skin tone, lighter skin tone, if you're a male, female, if you are the best qualified for the job, that is going to help the business the most. And I think business leaders are realizing this. Now, if this is true, it is promising. My hope is we see companies get rid of this stuff at the grassroots level. That's where real change is going to happen, because then we can be confident that it's going to be a lot harder for things to return if we see a change in the guard in the next presidential election. That's what I'm keeping my eyes on that, folks.
And when you say grassroots, you mean internally at the company?
I'm talking about internally. Yeah, I'm talking about internally at the company. If you see this stuff going away internally, that's a good sign. That's a really good sign. Now, the problem, Sam, is this next headline, because there is a question of if DEI is actually going away or if it's just getting rebranded.
Right. So that is the question. Are they keeping it but just calling it something else? I saw this article from a website called HR Grapevine. They said many companies are pivoting toward alternative terminology to maintain diversity-focused programs without actually altering them or attracting political backlash. They give examples of JP Morgan changing their phrasing of equity to opportunity in its initiatives, while companies like Walmart have also adopted phrases like Walmart for everyone. The article also says, while terminology may be changing, experts do suggest that corporate DEI strategies remain largely intact. So that's not the best headline there, but I want to pair that with what else is going on in the companies, because I think it's kind of both ands. Companies are changing their policies in name and still keeping some of their DEI ideas internally, ERG groups, all of those types of things. But there is also real change. For example, according to Robbie Starbuck, who's been the main driver in anti-DEI, he said many companies are making changes. For example, Walmart has outright ended participation with the pro-LGBT Corporate Equality Index. That's something many companies getting rid of DEI have also done as well. Walmart is also scrapping racial training for its employees on top of that. Meanwhile, JP Morgan, another company that was also listed in that article as not really making changes, I don't know, because CEO Jamie Dimon, he says some really harsh things about their DEI programs. He says it's all stupid and a waste of money, which says to me that there's going to be actual real change inside the company.
Yeah. Sam, I sure hope that's the case. I hope Robbie's right. I hope that what we're seeing with, Jamie Dimon having harsh language, hope that's legit. It was fascinating. Sam, we were talking yesterday after the show about how, so many companies who instituted this stuff back in the race riots of 2020 just kind of did it as like, okay, let's just do this. We'll have a little group of people doing this to kind of, basically appease the left wing of our constituency, basically. And then almost those groups formed a hostile takeover, and they became the leaders of these companies.
This is something Robbie Starbuck has talked about quite a bit. He says that they've kind of been held hostage by these guys that they hired just to put out some PR statements to get the far left to leave them alone. Over time, they've kind of taken over the company in this shadowy kind of way. So he says a lot of these companies, when he calls them, he says he's going to do this expose exposing all their DEI stuff. They're actually grateful. They're so happy Robbie Starbuck's giving them an out. Now he can put them on blast, and that gives them a reason to fire all these guys. Yeah. They never really had one before.
Crazy stuff. So Robbie's coming in not so much holding them hostage, but he's actually almost as the rescuer of those who held them hostage. Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, he said so many of them said, thank you. Thank you for calling us. We've been waiting for this.
Absolutely. Of course, folks, it's concerning to wonder if this stuff is merely getting rebranded using softer language. Absolutely. We need to recognize things as they are. And I also think there's a personal stewardship principle here at play, which is having a pure heart. We've been talking about that a lot on the show, actually, but I'd like to close our show with Matthew 23, 27 to 28, where Jesus pronounces a woe on the Pharisees. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside full of dead men's bones and all uncleanliness. Even so, you also appear righteous to men outwardly, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. This is DEI. This is it. This is an empty promise of righteousness without any actual real righteousness inside. It's outward displays, virtue signaling, but no heart change, no holiness. Folks, we need to avoid this stuff. We need to stand against this stuff. Let us never be about merely signaling to others how good we appear to be. Let's strive for true goodness. True goodness comes only in Christ. It only comes in submission to Christ. It only comes when we willingly follow him, when we accept the gift of salvation that he has given to us. It's Christ's righteousness applied to us. That's true goodness. None of us on our own is truly good, actually. In fact, we are wretched sinners to our core. It is Christ's goodness in us that actually makes us truly good. Cling to Christ, folks. Cling to his goodness and live for him and have a pure heart. I think that's a good lesson for us as we close our show here. Great to be here with you all, folks. Lord willing, we'll do it again tomorrow. Until then, remember, everything you have belongs to the Lord. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with it all. God bless you all. We'll see you next time for more financial issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.